And hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is Kid Native Bloody Elbow, joined once again by Dallas Winston and Zane Simon for the one, the only, the MMA Vivisection for UFC Fight Night Cincinnati, a word I can't spell, or UFC Fight Night Brown versus Silva, or UFC Fight Night 40, or UFC Fight Night 41, depending on whether you believe Wikipedia or SureDog. Welcome, fellas. Dallas, your hair's looking kind of short, and Chewy's looking kind of freaked out.
Well, hi, Nate.
Hey, Dallas.
Hey.
Talk. This is your moment.
Um,
What's
Hi.
going on with Chewy?
He's gangster.
So he's a blood. You're risking. That's a very risky play, dude. You better put some blue on there to balance that out.
If Suge Knight can be on the cover of Vibe magazine wearing all red, Chewy can rock it on the
Suge Knight
Vivisection.
held Vanilla Ice out a window by his ankles until the guy signed away all his royalty rights for life.
And his mistake was that went public. You don't know what Chewy has done.
I see. And Zane, how are we today?
I'm doing good.
It's very early on the West Coast. What are you doing wearing a Taco Libre shirt?
I'm wearing a Taco Libre shirt, Nate.
Are they paying you for that?
Wearing that hat
Is
covering
that a
your
product placement?
Oh, for what?
For Taco Libre, whatever that is.
Nate likes
Yeah,
to
that
start
works
the show by making personal observations on appearances and snarky comments. Just
That
let
must
him
have
have
worked
his
as a
fun.
great bit of advertising for them, since you immediately don't know what it is.
Hey, I mean, now I'm curious. I could go to Google and be a customer in minutes, unless it's a restaurant you have to walk into. But
Or
let's
something
get
that
this
requires
going.
money.
We've got to get going. There's a lot of fights on this card. First up, the Fight Pass preliminary card. Welterweights Anthony Lapsley and Albert Tumanov. Who wants to start this? Don't speak all at once. Come on.
Yeah.
Zane, wasn't Tumanov your boy? Didn't you say?
Yes, I'm still excited for Tumanov. And I hope that this fight doesn't go exactly the same way that his fight with Ildemar Alcantara went, which
You
was
made us all look kind of stupid on that one, Zane.
What?
You made us all look kind of stupid on that one.
I didn't make. I could not make you look any dumber than you are.
Zane, they said it couldn't be done, and then you came out. Tell us about this fight.
All right, so I'm still kind of looking for Albert Tumanov to impress. He did really well against Alcantara for a round, and then got tired and got taken down a lot. So I'm hoping that was just kind of first-time jitters, and that he can be a little more consistent and a little better prepared this time. Because Lapsley is a takedown artist, and he does have enough striking to keep to usually keep himself out of trouble on the feet. That's kind of his thing, is just sort of, he's got enough striking to bull his way in, get the clinch, get the takedown, and work from there. So if Tumanov isn't more attuned to that, then this could be problematic. The thing I would say that works best in his favor here is that Laps is a lot smaller than Ildemar Alcantara, who's kind of a beast at welterweight. So there's less of a chance that Tumanov just gets hulked the way he did in that last fight. So I'm picking Tumanov because I'm still really high on him. I still think he's a really great talent, but this fight will ask the exact same questions that the last one did of him.
And Dallas, what do you think?
Kind of interesting that the UFC brought in Lapsley. Not that I have any. I kind of like it. He's the kind of dude he'll be a good measuring stick for Tumanov. So there's some matches later on in the card that I'll piss and moan about a little bit, but this is kind of a good one. Even though, based on what Zane said, Alcantara is super long and lanky for welterweight, but Lapsley is like the exact opposite. He's short, compact, and he's burly as hell, and I think he'll be stronger. He's fought some good competition, so he's got losses to, I know, Huron and High, and he's got some wins over decent quality opposition. Mike Stump, who was in the UFC for a while, and Tyler Stinson, who I like a lot. I think he's an underrated welterweight, and Brent Weidman from Bellator. So he's a tough dude. He's been around for a while. I guess maybe what you'd call a journeyman, and I don't say that with any semblance of disrespect whatsoever. I'll probably go with Tumanov here, but he's going to have to use a lot of his technical style in order to beat Lapsley. I mean, it's not the kind of guy he wants to go in and lock horns with in the clinch. Actually, that's probably where Lapsley's best, close range, letting loose jackhammers, and he's a big burly dude. So I'll hesitantly pick Tumanov and blame Zane if I'm wrong.
All right.
Good
I can
call,
handle
good call. Zane's a big boy. The odds makers agree with our panel. They've got Lapsley as the underdog. I love his nickname, The Recipe. Possibly the worst MMA nickname ever.
It is
Lapsley's
much
underdog
worse.
plus 155 all the way up to plus 175. Tumanov favored anywhere from minus 190 all the way up to minus 210. And that brings us to lightweights Justin Salas and Ben Wall. Dallas, you can go first.
I kind of like Salas here just because Wall, it's not that I have anything against him, but I'm in the show me stage with him. And Salas is a tough dude. I don't know offhand what his wrestling credentials are, but he's got some pretty solid collegiate wrestling experience. And I was kind of impressed when he fought and beat Tim Means, because I think Means is a pretty crafty and feisty dude. So I'm going to go with Salas here. I think he's going to be able to out-wrestle him, and he's getting better in like mixing together his striking and his takedowns. And he's a pretty big, strong, athletic dude. So I'm going to go with Salas here.
He was actually D1 for University of Wyoming. Was where he
Word.
And I get my big reservation with Salas is really just from his last fight against Thiago Tavares, where I mean Tavares is a really strong fighter, really high level of competition, but Salas looked bad. He looked underprepared. He looked unready for that fight, and Tavares just swarmed him and choked him out really quickly. It was not a pretty fight at all. But I do think that he's more of like he's got a kind of classic wrestle boxes style going on that he implements well against the lower end of competition. And I haven't seen anything out of Wall that would suggest that he's anything but the lowest end of UFC competition right now. So I know what I expect out of Salas, and I know what he can come in and deliver, so I got to pick him.
And the odds makers agree. They've got Salas favored anywhere from minus 236 up to minus 270. Ben Wall, the underdog, anywhere from plus 185 all the way up to plus 212. And that brings us to featherweights Manny Gamburian and Nick Lentz. But first, if you're watching this, go ahead and give us a like on YouTube. We always need the likes. Subscribe to MMA Nation. Follow us on Twitter at Uncle Justice, which is Dallas Winston, at the Zane Simon, which is Zane Simon, at Kid Nate, which is myself. And Zane, I'm going to let you start on this one because you had some mean, hurtful things to say about my man Nick the Fence Lentz before the show.
Not mean and hurtful. I just think that he's perfectly situated as like this edge of the top 10 kind of gatekeeper role. I don't see him doing. I don't see him getting over the hump and getting up into title competition or getting into that top 5 at any point. And I mean, this bout kind of feels like a battle of gatekeepers. I'm not sure where Gamburian is ranked at the moment. He's not even ranked at the moment. So it kind of just feels like a fight to establish who can sit around near the top of the division and still stop guys from climbing into the top 10. And Lentz has been perfectly well situated to doing that so far in his career. And Gamburian, he's had trouble. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been impressed by Gamburian's fights for a while, even in wins, because he has, he didn't beat Dennis Seaver.
That was a no contest due to female hormones Seaver was taking.
Yeah, and his fight against Cole Miller was ugly. That was the one where a lot of people said that he should have lost that. He should have been TKO'd because he couldn't continue after the first round, and they gave him time to recover.
There was definitely shenanigans there after the first round.
Yeah, so I've just not been at all impressed by Gamburian lately, and I think Lentz has the kind of consistent high-pressure style to just kind of stay on top of Gamburian, and if not, I don't think he'll TKO him, but probably soundly outpoint him for 3 rounds, just grind him down.
And Dallas?
Zane, are you saying Lentz? Was that your pick?
Yeah,
Lentz is gonna. It's probably not popular opinion, but I'm actually kind of excited for this fight. There's a lot of weird similarities. I agree with Zane that both of these guys have been like nipping at the edge of whatever you want to call it. You know, relevancy in the division, the elite clique, whatever. They've both been close. Gamburin, I want to say, has consistently fought better competition, so that's why his record isn't quite as good. But they're both really similar. I'm kind of fascinated if Lentz does try to bully Gamburin around. That natural wrestling versus judo matchup should be kind of interesting.
I would argue, right, real quick, that he has not fought better competition. In fact, Lentz's recent opponents are Mendez, Hakran Diaz, Diego Nunez, Evan Dunham, Mark Bocek, Charles Oliveira, and Tyson, and then early on Tyson Griffin and guys like that. So, point of contention there.
Definitely, I agree for recent competition, but Gamburin has been around. And again, I'm going off memory, so I could be wrong here, but even in the WEC, I mean, he's been immersed with some guys, decent competition for a longer period of time. I want to say he hasn't gotten any softballs thrown his way.
That's true.
Either way, striking isn't their strong point, but it has a presence in both of their fights. And Gamburin, I'm kind of with Zane again that it's hard to be like blown away by some of his fights recently, but I do think that his striking has improved a little bit. And before, he had kind of like the Diego Sanchez syndrome, where that's why Rob Emerson tagged him when I think that was maybe Manny's first post-tough UFC fight, but just wide. He has like that wide throwing brick style with his elbows really high, no straight punches, and it's like a swarming frenzied style. He's cleaned that up a little bit because guys were just sidestepping and drilling straight punches through it. They're both tough as shit, and they can be grinders, and they both keep a really, really high pace. So I really have no idea who's going to win this fight. Lentz definitely has momentum on his side. Because it's close to make it interesting, I'll probably go with Manny here.
Controversial. The odds makers disagree, Dallas. They've got Manny as the underdog anywhere from plus 270 all the way up to plus 325. Nick the Fence Lentz, also known as Nick the Carney Lentz, Fence is my personal nickname for him, is heavily favored all the way from minus 330 all the way up to minus 475, and we're getting these odds from bestfightodds.com, and that brings us to the Fox Sports.
Is there a big size difference between these guys, height-wise?
Yeah, Manny is one of the shortest guys in the planet, I think.
In the planet?
In the planet. He's like 5'4".
Underneath the planet, he's 5'5". Lentz is 5'8".
So they say.
Ooh, that actually might be really big.
Yeah.
So Lentz is probably the safer pick because I do think this is going to be a physical match. I think other things might decide it, but the physicality and the scrambling, I think Manny might be a little bit of a better scrambler, definitely better submission grappler, but that size plays a role for me. So Lentz is probably the safer pick, but I'll still go long shot with Manny.
All right, and that brings us to the Fox Sports 2 preliminary card, starting up with bantamweights Eddie Weinland versus Johnny Eduardo. Why in the heck is this fight opening up the Fox Sports 2 card? Eddie Weinland is the man. Dallas, you can start this one.
I guess I don't know. It's not that. I mean, I think Eddie has to work his way back up, and this is a bit of a favorable opponent, but definitely not the kind of cat that you can look over. Am I wrong here? Wasn't Johnny Eduardo the Muay Thai coach for Black House?
Yeah, he's been Jose Aldo's Muay Thai coach for a long time.
I want to say it goes beyond that. Like, he has a real good rep as a Muay Thai coach. But either way, you have to favor Weinland here for a ton of different reasons. This should be this could be a stand and Wang kind of fight, so it should be a good one. But I like Weinland here, man. I mean, he's long and lanky, and his boxing is coming together like a thing of beauty. Kind of like Gamburin before. He has a real open style, and sometimes he's always been smart enough to like cut an angle before he comes in and starts throwing. But now he's doing it, keeping his head movement, and his defense is better, and his accuracy is on point. He's always had really, really underrated wrestling. I hate to always ask this question, but I want to say Weinland's going to be a little taller in this one too. Anybody got those specs handy?
I don't actually think that's the case. Weinland's 5'7", and Eduardo is 5'7", so no. Weinland is shorter than he looks.
He's got a really long reach for a guy of that height.
Yeah. Must be it. Either way, though, so I'm still going to go with Eddie here.
All right, Zane?
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird fight, in that, especially made weird because the UFC is trying to market, and a lot of websites and a lot of different writers who aren't doing much looking into it are parroting them in calling Johnny Eduardo a prospect. Like, he hasn't been fighting since 1996 and, fought Gomi back in, like, Shudo and
This is the wave of the
stuff
future,
like
kid.
And it's just, it's one of those things where I think that the UFC very much wants to see if Eduardo can be a top 10 bantamweight right now. Because there's no way he has time. There's nothing to develop there. He's a great Muay Thai fighter with a great rep as a Muay Thai fighter. And he either needs to be able to come in and compete with the top 10 guys in the division, or he's just going to end up sort of chum down at the bottom. And so I think that's what this fight is. And I don't really care about card position. I mean, yeah, it might suck for Eddie Weinland and his purse to earn his sponsors to have to be way down at the beginning of Fox Sports 2 prelim, but otherwise, whatever. I'm still going to watch him fight. And I got to pick him here. I mean, he's obviously, he's beat everyone except the champ recently, or, Joseph Benavidez and Uriah Faber, the consistent pound-for-pound number twos in their divisions.
Has Johnny Eduardo fought since the Curran fight?
No, he has been out forever, and that's a big reason. He's been out since 2012, May of 2012.
It's a full 2-year layoff.
Injuries.
And the odds reflect it with Eddie Weinland heavily favored, anywhere from -400 all the way past -420, all the way up to -475. Johnny Eduardo is the underdog, anywhere from +320, +295, all the way up to +350. And that brings us to welterweights Yan Cabral and Zach Cummings. Zane, you can go first.
All right, these are two fighters that, like, I don't know if they're ever going to really blow anyone away and be consistent fan favorites, but I'm consistently going to be excited to watch them. I thought that Cummings really sort of defied expectation in his last bout, where he just hit that Darce choke on Ben Alloway. That was gorgeous and just kind of dominated him. And Cabral has a long history of, he's one of those guys who hasn't fought a lot, but he's fought a lot of really top competition, and he has a strong, he's got a really strong jiu-jitsu base. And I think this is going to be a great matchup just because Cummings, he's going to be sort of more in the, like, wrestle grapple mode, and Cabral is going to be more in the jiu-jitsu grapple mode. They're both going to be really aggressive about it. So I think I'm going to pick Cummings here because I think he's going to be a little more physically dominant, and I think he's practiced enough to kind of shut Cabral down from top control, but I think it's going to be a really tough matchup, and I think it's very likely that Cummings gets submitted.
And Dallas, what you thinking?
The latter part of Zane's thing. I agree with everything he said, except I think I agree that Cummings is going to be the more physical guy, and he's going to look to wrestle a little more, but all of that really plays into Cabral's strengths. I mean, he's an amazing submission guy. The thing I'm concerned about is that this, between a wrestler and a grappler, this might end up being decided on the feet, where I'd say neither is pretty. I was reserved about Cabral, but he's looked pretty good. And
Cabral has great kicks. He's got a really powerful kicking game. That's really what his stand-up is all about.
And that's brilliant, because I remember, totally random and weird example, when Dean Lister fought in Pride, I think maybe it was Amar Sulawev, but he wanted to get the fight to the ground and he couldn't, so he started just throwing, like, big, huge high kicks, almost like Damian Maia does. And you can throw that because usually the concern is you're going to get taken down, so as long as you have pretty decent defense, you can throw, like, big, huge, wide, you can even telegraph, big blistering high kicks, and it looks good, and it's a way to establish range from outside, because he's fine if he gets into contact range, whether it's clinching or whatever. This will be a big test, and I'm glad Zane brought up that Darce choke that Cummings hit, because that was pretty surprising. So I will put in the caveat that maybe Cummings has much better knowledge of jiu-jitsu or submission grappling than we or I had thought. And it's much easier. I mean, the best place to shut down a submission guy is on top, punching him in the face with enough decent knowledge to not just shut down a submission once it happens, to prevent him from even getting started. So I think that's his best path to victory. I actually, if they were on the feet, I might give Cummings a chance there too, because I think he might be able to use his size and strength to just kind of bully him on the fence and smash him around a little bit. Might not be pretty, but I'm going to go with Cabral here, although this is kind of tough. It could go either way.
Well, the odds makers agree with you, Dallas. They've got Cabral pretty heavily favored, anywhere from minus 325 all the way up to minus 400. Zach Cummings is the dog, anywhere from plus 250 all the way up to plus 309. So kind of surprising odds there.
That's steep.
Yeah.
So that might be worth dropping a unit if you engage in the carnal sin of gambling, or is it a venal sin? I have no idea. And that brings us to flyweights. Kyoji Horiguchi, a guy getting a lot of hype, former Shudo champion against Daryl Montague. Dallas, you can go first.
Thanks for letting me go first, because this is the one I wanted to bitch about. And I usually don't have an issue with matchmaking at all, but lately I have, and this makes absolutely no sense to me, because one of the other common complaints is that the flyweight division, I mean, it's brand new, and the UFC is literally sweeping in the best possible talent in all the world, so the way they've done that's remarkable. But I don't understand this matchmaking at all. Number one, both of these guys are prospects, so like I said in another show, you're guaranteed to lose momentum on one of your really top prospects in a division that's really hungry for prospects' names, up-and-comers for fans to glom onto and follow and get excited about. And then they did the same thing with Montague in his debut, because they faced him off with Dodson. Montague's a tough bastard. He's one of the old Tachi Palace Fights crew who compiled a shitload of the top, probably had most of the top 10 flyweight talent under their roof than anyone in the world. Maybe Shudo would be a second. But he's tough as hell, and no one knows that. Casual fans see John Dodson smash some dude, and it doesn't mean anything. And Montague's good. So to me, this just makes no sense whatsoever to match him up like this. Horiguchi's, he fought bantamweight Dustin Pag. Didn't look the best in the first round. Got his back taken. Did not look that well, but then just smashed him in the second round on the feet, got on top of him and pounded him out. Pag is a really long and stretchy bantamweight, so that almost has no relevance here, because Horiguchi, is now dropping down to 125, so he actually should be, I don't want to say the bigger man, but he's definitely not going to face a size disparity like that. I'm going to go with Horiguchi here. Everyone's all on his nuts because he's a crazy bee, Kid Yamamoto product, and I kind of am too. Really tough matchup for Montague, though, man. I get the sense that he's a great flyweight talent in the way he's being brought in and introduced. No one's going to fucking know that.
And Zane?
Yeah, I pretty much got a pair at Dallas here, in that I'm not, I'm excited to watch this fight because I think it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun, and that's really my concern first and foremost, is that this will be fun to watch. But it does feel like Montague might be on the receiving end of a raw deal here. And Horiguchi, I mean, I really do think that he's one of the very top prospects in the UFC, one of the very top guys they could bring in who's expected to do well, but he's not without flaws. I mean, he's got some major holes in his striking defense, and he's got obviously some major holes in his grappling defense as well. And so, I think there's something there for Montague to exploit. I'm just not terribly sure that Montague's striking is up to the task of exploiting the striking holes, and I don't know. I think Horiguchi's going to be big and strong enough at 125 that he won't have the same problem with Peg, who was a really big bantamweight. So I got to pick Horiguchi here. I think he's the talent to pick, but it should be a fun fight.
And the odds makers agree. They've got Horiguchi slightly favored, anywhere from minus 170 all the way up to minus 190. Montague, the underdog, at anywhere from plus 145 up to plus 135 up to 155. And I think, Dallas, the thing is, they just don't have the flyweight depth to be bringing anybody along. They've got to throw everybody in, dog against dog.
But isn't that more of a reason to make wise matchups? So why take if you only have a small talent pool, why take two of the big prospects?
I don't know if Sean Shelby's watching the show, Dallas. I don't know. But message received. I hear you for what it's worth. And that brings us to middleweights. Ed Herman and Rafael Natal heading up the prelim card. Zane, I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, boy. If there's a fight on this card that I'm probably less than thrilled to talk about, this would be it. I don't
Two
know.
middleweight grinders in the middle of the pack.
Well, Natal's not a grinder. Natal is
He's more of a guy I can't trust.
striker who does stupid stuff. I mean, this is just one of those fights that, like, I don't know. I wish that there was like a big upside to be excited about. But either guy who wins this fight is not gonna like get a big career boost out of it. Is not gonna be suddenly like scraping at the top 15 or looking for a prime matchup. They're gonna be looking for another guy like Ed Herman or Rafael Natal.
Wasn't Natal headlining a card just months ago?
Yes, he was.
But isn't Herman in the top 15? At least on
No.
the UFC rankings, he's got to be.
No, he's not. He's not even close. Middleweight? Ed Herman?
No.
So who's the top? Who's 12, 13, 14 on the UFC rankings?
Costa, Philipo, Tim Boach, Talis Leites, and Brad Tavares.
Oh yeah, all right. That
Boy.
division has actually changed a little bit and gotten a little
Yes,
thicker.
it has.
Guys.
And
All right.
I mean, both these guys, they're in the top half of the division. This should be a fun fight because Ed Herman's got no problem letting himself get drawn into a firefight and just slugging it out with somebody. And Natal, that's really like, I mean, he'll fight smart, and then make a big stupid mistake and get himself hurt badly. So, you know, I'm gonna pick Natal to hopefully, you know, keep exciting and stay more or less mistake-free. But, you know, Herman could easily tough his way through a bad couple rounds and make something fun happen.
All right. And Dallas?
I actually like this fight. This fight and the one before it, Horiguchi and Montague, they should be, I mean, like, good scraps, good old-fashioned fist fights. The thing about this card is, like, you have really no idea what either of these guys are going to do. Ed Herman started out as a grappler. His boxing started to look really well, and then his takedowns, he has a really nice, like, counter, some judo shit when people try to take him down, counter throws, counter hip tosses. And, I mean, didn't he hit that sweet knee bar on Kyle Noak, am I right, or some kind of leg lock? So I don't know why I like Ed Herman. I always like to ride with Ed Herman. Rafael Natal is kind of like Zane said. These guys strike me as if they do have a game plan coming in, as soon as they get punched in the mouth, it's out the window and they just start going on instinct. Which, I mean, I watch fights for people to stick to the game plan. You know, that's gonna be pretty viewer friendly. Natal will be all like Zane said. He'll be sloppy and he'll throw a spinning back fist and stumble and almost lose his balance, and then a couple minutes later he'll reel off a picture perfect kickboxing combo, left right high kick or something shockingly technically fundamentally sound. So who the fuck knows? Natal's got the better jiu-jitsu game. I do think that Herman is the kind of guy he can still get submitted because he doesn't give a shit. He'll take chances. He'll throw himself into a bad position, and that's why I think this will be a good fight. So that outlook, both of these guys have it. So it's not really. I think that's the beauty of this fight. Nate, what's up?
Make your pick. You're the one that has to leave early, so you gotta make it quick. Quick.
All right, Ed Herman, don't ever make that hand motion at me, you slut. I hated that.
Uh-huh.
I've lost all.
The odds makers have this one pretty close. Herman anywhere from -105 all the way up to +120. Natal slightly favored anywhere from -125 all the way to -150. That brings us to flyweights. Chris Carrioso against the hot prospect Louis Smoka. Dallas, is Smoka hot or is he red hot?
Smoka smoking, dog. What? That's all. Hurry up.
Do you have a pick?
If I'm sitting here waiting for you to talk, Nate, don't do this. What did I say about that damn hand motion? I don't know. I like Louis Smoka. I get the impression that there's a lot of fans are going to like him. There's not a whole lot not to like about the dude. While I'm making my pick.
I'm trying to make the Crips hand gesture. Anyway, go ahead.
Make that to Chewbacca, actually. You can see he frowns in disapproval at. So I'm going to go with Smoka here. I like Carrioso, but he's just, he's never really given me something to be excited about or to be... He's tough as hell, though, you know what I mean? He's the kind of dude that can hang with everybody. And really, I don't know who's favored here. Carrioso should be. because he's just been in there. Even though he hasn't beat everyone, he's been in the mix. So, but I'm going to go with Smoka. Size difference?
Large.
Yes, for Smoka, right?
Yeah, Smoka is huge at flyweight. I think he's 5'9" as a flyweight. And
So I got-
Carriazo is like 5'4".
Oh, damn. I don't know if he's 5'9". I think that might be a bit of a stretch, pun intended.
It's listed at 5'3" on Sherdog. Smoka's at 5'9" on Sherdog and Wiki.
Holy shit, 5'9". All right, so I got Smoka via Hawaii.
All right, Zane?
I gotta go Smoka all the way. Carriazo is one of those guys that I think he fights. I want to say he fights down to the level of his opponent, and he his fight against Danny Martinez that he won was just kind of brutal. Like Danny Martinez is a pretty one-dimensional fighter, and Carriazo had all kinds of trouble keeping himself ahead of that fight, and I just don't think that, like, what I've said about him in the past is that he's a range kickboxer with tiny arms.
Like, definitely puts a ceiling on your growth opportunities. The odds makers are huffing the fumes. We got to move. I got Smoka heavily favored. The prospect anywhere from -115 all the way up to -140. Chris Carriazo, the veteran, is the dog in this fight, anywhere from +100 all the way up to +115. And that brings us to a battle of the heavyweights. Soa Pele against Rowan Potts of South Africa, the first EFC fighter to come into the UFC, to my knowledge. Dallas, you want to go first?
The first what? What? Say
South
that again?
African fighter, EFC, the South African promotion.
Yeah, I can't think of another.
No, it's the promotion that's almost killing fools down in South Africa.
I think they are killing fools.
They are killing fools, yeah.
And let's not call the dead fools. That was a sad,
that's not funny to make light
tragedy. No. We don't approve of that. Anyway, go ahead, Dallas. Zane's very sorry, everybody.
Potts would seem to have a package. I think he's been doing judo since he was a wee lad. He's a black belt in judo, brown belt in jiu-jitsu.
Was he ever a wee lad? This guy is a pretty hulking behemoth.
Well, I mean, that whole coming out of the womb part does curtail some of the size. I don't know. Let's not
see. So there's a top side to how big a baby can be. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, that's something we can discuss at length and at a different time. On paper, he matches up pretty well because I think you know what you're getting with Pele. He's a big dude. He wants to tie up, and I mean, he's just gonna look to manhandle you at any point in time. He's just not the best in open space striking, but it doesn't matter because he's always gonna look to stick to you anyways. I don't know. I watched him at first when I looked at Potts' credentials. I thought, this could be an upset for the newer guy. But I watched some tape on him and just wasn't impressed. His striking does not look that good. Some guy took him down and he hit a real nice counter takedown, kind of like what I was saying with Ed Herman, counter hip toss. But I don't know. I'm not too inspired by his chances here. So Pele.
And Zane?
This is the sad thing for Potts, is what I'll say. If you watch the tape, 99% of the tape that's available out there on him, he does not look any good. Because it's all from 3 or 4 years ago. It's all from early in his career, and most of his newer fights haven't made it out there. But there's at least one of his most recent fights is only 30 seconds long, so the whole highlight can be found out there. And he looks way improved. He's made a big leap lately, especially in his striking and in his takedowns. He's made a big jump recently, and I am really excited to see him fight. And he's actually training under one of the only South Africans to fight in the UFC. So actually, I guess he's the second. I believe it's Mark. I want to say it's Mark Robinson. His nickname was the White Rhino.
Isn't Trevor Prangley from South Africa?
Trevor Prangley, yeah. How could we forget that?
Yeah, but he trains under one of the classic one-off UFC guys who won a fight and then never tried it again because they didn't have enough money to pay anyone back then. I want to say it's Mark Robinson is his name.
You're correct. Mark Robinson, MMA is where he trains.
And Robinson, Robinson was like a national judo, national Greco, national freestyle wrestling champion in South Africa, like one of their combat sporting hero kind of guys. So I'm excited about Potts. I think that, like Dallas says, you watch some of his tape, some of his oldest stuff, and you're just like, wow, this guy does not look all that great. But I think he's developed a lot in the last couple of years, and I'm hoping that he can use his judo on Pele and make this fight a lot of fun. If not, if he can't, because Pele is just too big. I mean, Pele is the kind of guy who cuts to get to 265. Then we could just be in for an interesting night. That'll be weird because Pele hits hard and is huge and can make any fight just terrible on his opponent. And it doesn't even really matter who the opponent is. He's had a lot of success against all sorts of people.
Yeah, he's reeled off a real list of winners recently. Bob Sapp, Sean McCorkle, Nikita Krylov, Pat Barry. It's practically a Mount Rushmore of MMA.
Yeah.
But I would love to see Potts toss Soa Pele. Like, if you can toss the Hulk, I will pay to see you fight. That is a guaranteed. Looking forward to that. The odds makers like the Hulk. They've got him favored anywhere from minus 225 all the way up to minus 245, and they've got Ron Potts as the underdog, anywhere from plus 190 all the way up to plus 205, which brings us to some Ultimate Fighter veterans, welterweights Neil Magny and Tim Means. Who wants this one first? Zane, you're looking lucky.
I don't think Means was on the Ultimate Fighter.
Magny was.
Yeah.
That's
so
all
it's
I
a
meant.
battle
That's all I
between
meant. It was half true.
one
Okay,
person.
half truths.
I'm
That's
just checking. All right.
That's all our audience can expect. Go ahead.
Now that's true. That's all the way true.
Nate, better than nothing Wilcox.
Indeed.
All right. Anyway, I'm really happy to see Tim Means back in the UFC. Apparently, the story there on him getting released was actually that he wanted to go up to welterweight, and the UFC wanted him to stay at lightweight, so he asked to be let go to go back out on the regional scene and win a few fights at welterweight and move up and even do some kickboxing, which never came about. But he did move up to welterweight, and now he's back at welterweight, and that's probably going to be good for him because he missed weight a couple times in the UFC and had a lot of trouble getting down to 155. And Magny really looked awesome in his last fight, so this should be great. I want to go with Means here because I know he's got the power edge. Magny did himself a big favor by really turning up the volume on his striking. He was kind of a sit and wait and throw a weak jab and a weak cross and sit and wait and do all that. And then his last fight, he just was on from go and throwing strikes, throwing combinations, moving well, looking good. But he's still not a power striker, and I think Means has really sharp boxing, can match him in volume, and I'm expecting. I want to see Means win this because I've always liked him as a fighter. I've always liked watching him.
We can't abide that kind of bias, saying that personal opinion has no place here. Dallas, you're next. The Dirty Bird? The Dirty Bird, what a great nickname, huh?
Dirty Bird. I believe both of these guys have some kind of obscene reach length. They're both really, really long.
Yeah.
And who did Magny fight in his last
Gathan Umalatov.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he did. I actually liked Magny on Tough. I don't want to say I had high hopes for him, but I thought he was semi-interesting. I agree with most of what Zane said. It'll be interesting. Means was really stretchy at lightweight, so now that he's at welterweight, and that was a big part of his game. I do think that they're both pretty decent strikers. I think Magny's got a little bit of reach on him, but I do think Means is crisper, more accurate, definitely, much more explosive and powerful too. Magny has shown good defensive grappling, so good takedown defense and good scrambling, but I think Means is a little more well-rounded because he showed a lot of that as well, but he's also showed a little bit more offensive grappling. So, and I'm a Tim Means fan too, so I'm going to go with the Dirty Bird.
And the Dirty Bird is heavily favored anywhere from minus 255 all the way up to minus 280 And Neil Magny is the underdog anywhere from plus 200 all the way up to plus 236. Looks like
I would say that Magny is probably worth an underdog bet there. He looked way better than he had any time earlier in his career in his last fight, and there's every bit of chance that he looks way better in this fight.
So if you lose some money on Neil Magny, blame Zane.
Yes.
And that brings us to my man, Darren, the Detroit superstar, Cruikshank against Eric Koke in a lightweight battle. And Zane, I'll let you go first on this one, too.
All right. I don't actually know how to pick this fight at all. This is... I mean, these are two
We need answers,
fighters
Zane. We need
who
answers.
I think have already shown that they have a style that either works or it doesn't for their opponent. Like, Cruikshank especially, if you can get inside and box him, you can shut him down. Or if you can get inside and you can push him against the fence and you can make it a rough fight on the inside, you can shut down Cruikshank's offense. That's how Adriano Martins shut him down. That's how John McDessie shut him down. If you give him space and time to work from the outside, he will just light you up. No problem at all. And Koke, he's a really solid kickboxer, but he's shown that he's not necessarily always defensively perfect, and if he goes strike for strike with somebody, he can get outworked a bit. I gotta say, I think that Koke's style plays too heavily into Cruikshank's style, and that Koke isn't going to get inside and bully Cruikshank. He's going to sit outside and he's going to try and go shot for shot with him, and I'm not sure that he can match him for variety. And I think it's going to be one of those... I don't know that Cruikshank is going to quite blow him out of the water, but I think this is Cruikshank's fight to lose in the way that, in Koke's style. I think it really works for him.
A bold pick, Dallas. Do you agree? Disagree?
Are the betting lines all jacked up on this? Like,
I'm not going to tell you the betting lines until after you make your pick, Dallas.
Okay.
No, I'll tell you. I mean, if you're really going to pout about it, it's
turkey.
Koke is totally favored here.
Yeah, so just based on that alone, I'm going to take Cruikshank. On top of that, he's a Michigan boy. That's number 2. Number 3, I don't remember what fight. It might have been his last one, but I picked against him and felt terrible for it, and he won. So, I agree with. I wasn't sure where Zane was going with that, and I like the way he ended it because Koke is not the kind of guy. I don't know if I've ever seen him win a fight by crowding someone and beating him up in the phone booth. He's a total. When I first saw him, I mean, this dude, his technique is excellent from outside. So these guys are both good kickboxers. Cruikshank has got way more of the TMA style. Koke is traditional kickboxing, real tight, laser straight punches. He's fast as hell. He might be a little quicker than Cruikshank, and even if he's not, the fact that all of his strikes are direct, so his high kick is, even though it's a roundhouse, it's from foot to the floor, right to the face, where, Cruikshank's got a little more mojo in all of his stuff. So I do think Koke will have the height, the reach, and a better chance of getting off first. Maybe that's why he's favored, but I look at this as fairly even, and I'm going to make a mark pick for Cruikshank here.
I see. The panel is going against the odds makers, which, as I said before, have Koke heavily favored anywhere from minus 341 all the way up to minus 390. And Cruikshank, the Detroit superstar, is a crazy underdog anywhere from plus 230 all the way up to plus 315. And that brings us to middleweights Konstantinos Philipo versus Lorenz Larkin. I got to say, Konstantinos is possibly my least favorite fighter to blog because that name is effing impossible to spell. And Dallas, I'll let you talk.
Well, just go with Costa.
And then you still have to do Philipo. So go ahead. And if you call one guy by the first name, then you have to call them both by the first name.
So I've always said about Larkin, I've always liked him, but I noticed when I was really studying him for a dissection that his boxing is really nice. I mean, really, really nice. Quick, fast as hell, nasty. And Philipo has basically gotten away with being a boxer with good takedown defense. So he might actually take Larkin down, but I don't think, even if he does that and gets him down, I don't think it's going to be much more. I mean, at best, maybe a stalemate. So I'm thinking all Larkin here. No disrespect whatsoever to Costa, because he's a really tough dude, but I think it's a really shitty matchup for him, actually.
And Zane?
This is a good question mark for me. Fight for me for Larkin. Honestly, I mean, I'm gonna pick him here, but he has to answer a very real question, which is, can he maintain volume and keep opponents off of him? Because Brad Tavares just swarmed him for 3 rounds, and just, completely, with a higher level of aggression and higher level of output. And Philipo starts slow. It takes him time to find his range and his rhythm. And then once he does find that range and rhythm, he really gets going and he really starts to strike heavily in combination. He gets inside and really puts it on guys. But he needs like a round to get there. And Larkin's the kind of guy who will let him have that time, and he'll let him have that space. He's going to sit on the outside. He's going to look for that perfect one-off strike. He's going to look for that perfect kick and try and land it and try to do something really highlight reel worthy. And so if he just sit some weights on Philipo, he can let this be a much closer fight than I think it would otherwise be. So I'm going to pick Larkin, but I do think that he has to show that he can outwork Philipo.
I think that's a good insight. Also, Costa left the Matt Serra-Ray Longo camp and has not been the same fighter since. So Lawrence Larkin is favored, but not overwhelmingly. Anywhere from minus 225 all the way up to minus 240 is the worst. Minus 257 on one side. Costa Philipo is the underdog, anywhere from plus 189 all the way up to plus 207. That brings us to the main event: Eric Silva versus Matt Brown, welterweights. Dallas, I'll let you go first.
Well, I'm going to pick Matt Brown in this one, even if it doesn't make sense, because I mean, that's why I fucking watch MMA. You know what I mean? To have guys like, Matt Brown that you notice and respect and then start to come along. So that's my reasoning, for this. And that's not all a homer pick either, because, Silva, it's been hard. He got thrown into the fire so early. And it's hard to tell where he's at, really. I mean, even though he's had a bunch of UFC fights, I'm still not exactly sure what level he's at or what his status is at. I do agree that he's shown shit that, he's got great potential. I mean, those whatever those kicks were that he threw in his last one, I mean, he's not going to be able to get away with that shit here. But it's kind of a tough matchup for Matt Brown, and I'm interested to see how Silva tackles it, because Brown loves to be in the phone booth. Silva does okay there as well, but I don't know if he'll just go ahead and embrace him there, toe-to-toe, which would be great for the fans, or whether if he's smart, I think he would try to take Matt Brown down that round, because he's always had his offensive submission work has really come along, but defensively it seems like he might be a little bit questionable there. And his takedown defense, kind of the same thing. I couldn't believe when he fought, damn it, what's the guy's name? Muay Thai guy.
Kim?
No, he beat Uriah Hall. John Howard? You guys with me? John Howard. Give me a fist bump.
Jason High. It wasn't John Howard.
Yeah, he fought Matt Brown fought John Howard in 2011.
Shut the fuck up, Nathan.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Eric Silva.
This is terrible. So he actually was in the clinch with John Howard, and I mean, hit like an outside foot sweep and almost ragdolled him. And John Howard is a big, strong dude. So offensively, Matt Brown does well. I think when he gets focused on throwing elbows and punches, that he's susceptible to takedowns. I don't know if Silva's going to take that route or not, but I'm going to go with Brown by chewing tobacco.
And Zane?
I think I'm going to have to go with Eric Silva here. And not because I don't know, I mean, I like Matt Brown. I'd like him to win. I think he's fun and awesome. But I think it's just that Silva is competent enough in striking and on the feet. And in the clinch, I mean, if Pat Wyman is to be believed, Silva does his best work striking in the clinch. And I think he's competitive enough there that at some point he can get this fight to the ground, whether it's through takedown, whether it's through scramble, whether it's through whatever. And he'll be much better on the ground than Matt Brown will be. And so I'm picking him by submission, but I do think there's every chance that Silva could just go out there like he fought Dong Yeon Kim and try to make this a wild, sloppy slugfest, at which point Brown is much better suited to win that fight.
And the
Good call
odds
on the
makers,
scrambles. Silva definitely has a big edge in transitions and scrambles.
yeah, and the odds makers like him too. He's heavily favored anywhere from -205. I wouldn't say heavily, but he's favored across the board, all the way up to -240. Matt Brown's the underdog, anywhere from +160 all the way up to +201. And you got to be thinking that's got to piss Matt Brown off, because here's a guy with a 6-fight UFC win streak fighting a guy who's 4-3 in the UFC, and he's still the underdog. What does Matt Brown have to do to get some respect? We don't know. Anyway, that's our show. Give us a like on YouTube. Subscribe to MMANation.com. Follow us on Twitter at Uncle Justice, at the Zane Simon, at Kid Nate. Read us on BloodyElbow.com. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back. Zane, will you join me for a 6th round after the fights?
I hope so. I think so.
Awesome. We'll have that. We will not have a bathrobe review. I've declared this card not bathrobe review worthy, and then Eugene will be back with the knuckle up after that. So, adios, fellas. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Adios.